Thank you for joining us today as we are at New Hope Baptist Church in Rosedale, Georgia. It's good to see everybody here today and good to gather together and sing songs. And now we look at Matthew chapter 2, if you want to turn there with me. Over the last couple of weeks, we looked at Luke chapter 2 and the angels who came and made the announcement to tell the world, and specifically the Jewish world at that point, that there's a Savior who has come. He was born in Bethlehem. And today we realize that not only did the angels come and make the announcement, but God also announced this birth to the Gentile world as well with a star. And so that's what we read today as we read Matthew 2, 1 through 12, and we come to celebrate today Epiphany, which actually occurred on Friday. But we just want to remember that Christ has come and Christ has announced himself to us. And so I want to begin by reading to you from Matthew chapter 2. It says, "Now after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of Herod the king, behold, Magi from the east arrived in Jerusalem, saying, 'Where is he who is born King of the Jews? For we saw his star in the east, and we have come to worship him.' And when Herod the king heard it, he was troubled, and all of Jerusalem with him. And gathering together all the chief priests and all the scribes of the people, he began to inquire of them where the Christ was to be born. And they said to him, 'In Bethlehem of Judea, for so it has been written by the prophet. And you, Bethlehem, land of Judah, are by no means least among the leaders of Judah. For out of you shall come forth a ruler who will shepherd my people Israel.' Then Herod secretly called the Magi and ascertained from them the time the star appeared. And he sent them to Bethlehem and said, 'Go and make careful search for the child. And when you have found him, report to me that I too may come and worship him.' And having heard the king, they went their way, and lo, the star which they had seen in the east went on before them, until it came and stood over where the child was. And when they saw the star, they rejoiced exceedingly with great joy. And they came into the house and saw the child with Mary his mother, and they fell down and worshipped him. And opening their treasures, they presented to him gifts of gold and frankincense and myrrh. And having been warned by God in a dream not to return to Herod, they departed for their own country by another way." Let's go to the Father in prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for your word. We thank you for the truth that is written, that we too may write it upon our hearts, that we may live it in our lives, that Christ has come, that we may no longer be alone. We thank you, dear Father, and ask that you would help us to continue to seek after Christ every day. For it's in his blessed name that we do pray. Amen. Well, as I said earlier, we looked at Luke chapter 2 and heard that the good news was announced by the angels. But today we look at a star, a very special star, and realize that God was speaking to others, the whole world, essentially, as we know. And even though it says that in Luke 2, that it's good news for all people, we just see it even more today as it is announced to those outside of Israel. And as this happens, these men who were sometimes called Magi, or they're actually priestly men, and of course leadership. They were leaders of their country as well, and they were scholarly men. And you hear sometimes, you see where they are listed as astronomers or astrologers. Now that's not astrology like we get in the newspaper today, but they knew where the astrological signs were, and they knew how it moved through the seasons and how the sky changed and things, and they knew enough to know that a new star had appeared and that God was sharing something. And possibly when the Jews had dispersed throughout the world, and sometimes they had come upon some Jews, and possibly they had read some of their literature. Possibly they'd read from Daniel. We don't know what they knew But we do know that they were searching, and they may have had some things to help them begin to understand what they were looking at and what they were looking for. But they were certainly men who were seeking after something else. They were seeking after God. And though sometimes you might see that they are listed as magicians, I would say they're not. It is that they took these words that talked about the wise men, and when the Greeks used this word, they added, what might be where we get our word magician, I don't know, but the Magi, and added to it that they were some kind of magicians, and that's really not what I think it should say. What we should understand is that they were very smart men, and they were very learned men, and they were seeking. And when you think about them, and the point of this story will be a contrast with others in the story between them, between the wise men and others. But as you think of these men and the announcement they had, you remember in our story a couple of weeks ago that once the shepherds heard, they just took off and went. And of course, they had a much shorter distance to go, but they would go and they found the baby laying in a manger, and there they would worship that baby. And we see a similar thing happening here. But these men, who we probably say there are three, probably because they had three gifts, and but we really don't know exactly. We don't know everything about these men, and as we've just stated, that we come to some conclusions that they may have known some things before they begin to make their journey. May have had some contact with other Jewish people or literature, and it may have led them this way, but understand that they realized that something was going on. Now, they didn't just travel within their own country as the shepherds did, and as they came, it tells us that they followed the star. And so it's already an abnormal kind of occurrence here as they follow the star, but it's going to get even more abnormal. And there's a lot of things that there's a lot of studies on this, and you can probably look it up on YouTube and stuff that talk about the star, and a lot of theories on how it might have been a dying star that moved and stuff. But we understand that God had a great announcement, and He wanted to share it with the whole world. And for these who saw the star, they begin to make a great journey. They probably, now we understand, I think about a crazy story when I don't know if I was in high school or college, but I was pretty close to college if I wasn't. But one day we were just sitting around in Dalton bored, and didn't have anything to do, and then we realized that the Atlanta Braves had a game that night, and we just picked up and got some money and went on down to the Atlanta Braves. And it was some of the years they were not doing very well, and we bought some of the cheaper seats, but there was so few people there, they let us move way down there, almost sitting with them. And I said, we just, I think about that, how we just up and did that in a couple hours, and probably barely made it right before the game started. But it's traveling in the Bible is not like that. You can't just up and go quickly and go a long way, and we don't know exactly where they came from or how far. There was many who would say they're Persian, and we don't know exactly, but probably somewhere no less than 600 miles away. And if you think about making a 600-mile trip without a car, that doesn't sound too fun, does it? And so somewhere between 600 and 1,400 plus miles these people traveled. And they really they knew something special had happened. They knew that there was someone who was born, and that this spoke to them, that God had placed a star because a special child had been born. And certainly we all know the story of Jesus, and we've talked about Luke chapter 2 in the last couple of weeks, but just a reminder that had God not come in the form of a human, he could not have paid our sin debt. And we realize this, but let's be thankful for it and remember it in this time of the year as we continue to celebrate Christmas and begin a new year at the same time. And we must understand that that Jesus came, and he came without a lot of fanfare. You know, we talk about a star that that announced him, but you didn't see a big sign in heaven that said, "Look here, here's the Son of God." He was born, as we talked about a couple weeks ago, a humble, very humble birth in a manger, probably which was a cave and a little stone feeding trough surrounded by animals, and nothing we'd have in a normal, regular birthing suite nowadays. And we understand that it was a humble birth. He wasn't born in a palace. They didn't. They went and they announced this to shepherds, who were probably some of the lowliest of people. No kings were notified. No Caesar Augustus wasn't notified. And we see that here in this story as well. Herod was not notified. Nobody came to Herod and said, "You know what? The King of the Jews is born." And because when somebody did come, when these wise men traveled from a long distance and they came, but you understand, like I said, there's no jumping in a car and going somewhere. They had a large caravan with them. We don't know how large. We're pretty, sure of the fact there was at least 3 wise men. But there's no telling how many people they had with them, helping them to travel and carry all the things they would need to be able to travel such a great long distance, and to do it without the systems that we have today, without roadways and hotels and places to stop, certainly not as many. And I just... It amazes me to think of the fact that it was just a dangerous thing that we don't ever have to think about it when we travel. We don't have to think about perilous conditions when we travel, except maybe if we fly and then the flight gets delayed or something. We don't have to think of that. But they traveled this many miles to come. And the contrast that I was talking about is here we have Herod, who doesn't even know what's going on. He doesn't even, and he's supposed to be the King of the Jews. He doesn't even know the prophecy. He has to call together his people and get them to come and to give him some kind of frame of reference of what's going on and where it would be, because he is shocked when these wise men and their caravan comes into town, and it says that it troubled not only Herod but the whole town. It says, and when Herod the king heard it, he was troubled, and all of Jerusalem with him. Well, why were they troubled? Because they knew their king was crazy, and that he might do something crazy, and obviously he does later. And it had not stopped him before from killing family, because he was afraid he might lose his throne. And so why would this be any different? They were afraid of what might happen. And certainly as we see this, he puts on a face that's, I want to find this king too, so that I may worship him. He decides to send the wise men out and to send them from to Bethlehem and to search for the babe. But time has passed, and when the word for the child is different. It's tekon, and it's probably the babe is probably a year or a year and a half to 2 years old, possibly up to 2. And time has passed. They're no longer in the manger, and the baby Jesus is probably toddling around. And as they come, it tells us that it tells us that he calls them together, as we said, and he acts like he wants to go find the child and to worship him as well. But it tells us also about the star. And having heard the king, they went their way, and lo, the star which they had seen in the east went on before them. So I said, it's already a spectacular star. It's already different. It's already unbelievable. It's already new. But the star begins to move. At first it directs them toward Jerusalem, and now it's directing them toward Bethlehem. And it tells us, and having heard the king, they went on their way, and lo, the star which they had seen in the east went on before them. So it's moving. It's not only a new star, but it moves where it's at until it came and stood over where the child was. And it says, and when they saw the star, they rejoiced exceedingly with great joy, and they came into the house and saw the child with Mary his mother, and they fell down and worshipped him. Excuse me. And so we get the very picture of worship once again. Just as we got with the shepherds, we got the wise men getting the message, making the journey, somewhere between 600 to 1,400 plus miles probably, and going before the baby and falling prostrate before him. That's literally the definition of the word worship, is bowing before God. And so here we have the first experience of seeing Gentiles coming and bowing before God. And that is the reason we celebrate the Epiphany. Last Friday was the day, and it was the 12th day of Christmas. And so, you know, I understand all the things about starting Christmas too early and ending Christmas too late and all that kind of stuff, but we surely should have the spirit of Christmas in our heart all year long. And we give thanks this day that God has made this message known to the whole world, to all of us, that we might know and that we might follow their example, that we too should be on mission for Christ. We too should be seeking for Christ every day. You'll see those little shirts or signs or something that says wise men still seek Christ. And though we don't know everything about them, we know that they made a sincere effort to seek after Christ. And I know, you know, sometimes there's bad weather and things happen, and we think, well, you know, I want to travel in this. Well, they certainly didn't. It didn't stop them. And certainly we should not allow things to stop us from getting to Christ, from getting to Him and spending time together with Him, and time together with fellowship with those who seek after Him. And as they came and they worshiped Him, as I said, they also gave Him gifts which tell us about His life. And certainly it, you know, when they give these gifts, let me just share, and having, let's see, and worshiping and opening their treasures, they presented Him gifts of gold and frankincense and myrrh. And of course, gold, because as King Herod hated to hear, this was the King of the Jews. This was the true King of the Jews. But not only is He going to be King of the Jews, it's going to be revealed later that He is King of all kings. And there were many kings in those days. Sometimes we think about that. We don't hear a king much. There's not a whole lot of kings like there were, but there were many kings in His land at that time, and He is certainly King of all kings. And that gold was fitting for a king. And the next one is frankincense, and that is representative of the fact that He is the Son of God. We talked about this a lot in the last week, just the fact that He was born of a virgin. He was, you know, there's so many prophecies in Isaiah and Micah, as we talked about, born in Bethlehem, and other prophecies that He fulfilled. You know, you could preach a month on or maybe even longer, a quarter on just the things that he was prophesied to do and that he did. And certainly he is the Son of God, as he proved himself through his life, as he lived for us, as he walked with us through mountains and valleys and all kinds of things. And certainly he showed that he is the Son of God. And even the thinking on later in his life, even the Roman soldier looked up and when he gave his last breath said he is the Son of God. Those first-hand accounts that we hear that Luke searched up and others wrote about that tell us that he is the Son of God. And then the most important that we can't forget, he came for a very important reason, and that last gift was of myrrh, and that was used to prepare bodies for burial. And certainly we know not only did Jesus come to be King of all kings, and not only was he the Son of God, but he was going to obey his Father's wishes and give his life to save ours. Truly, that is the story of Christmas, that he has come, that we no longer have to be alone again. The first day that we sinned on this earth, we separated ourselves from God. And from Genesis 3:15 on, where God promised that one would come to step upon the serpent's head with his heel and destroy him, God has made his promise come true. That his Son has come and lived, and he has destined to die, that we too might have hope to trust in him. And so I hope that we can learn once again from the wise men that we shouldn't let anything stop us from getting to Christ. We should seek after him and his people every time we can. And hopefully, I hope that everyone is going to church and fellowshipping with the people of God and searching for God in their life and loving him and thanking him for all that he has done for us. He has made this life wonderful, and even though there are troubles and trials in this life, it only leads to everlasting and no more troubles. And so I thank you for joining me today, and I hope you will just read through Matthew again and maybe even Luke 2 again, and just allow it to speak to you and let you know that Christ has come. And Emmanuel is here. We're no longer alone. We are able to worship together and live together as family and forever. Thank you for joining me.